All right, welcome back. YouTube viewers, thank you for returning. People that are just coming, thank you for joining in. This is what I call my hammock lab. Today we're going to go over one of the, I would say top 10 frequently asked questions that I get. Welcome back, YouTube. Gilly's Gear Hammock Lab here. Well, let me see if I can find a pillow. Side note, in case anybody's wondering how I like to lounge when I have a underquilt in, I use the underquilt suspension just to kind of hold that pillow in place, and I can just kind of relax just like so. Have a nice little environment. Usually is about how to figure out what the distance is between trees, or to find trees that are the right distance, or etc. We would take 10 paces, measure it, take the average, divide it by 10, because those are 10 paces, and that's the average stride distance. And you can use that to kind of pretty accurately rough out what distances are out in the field. And this is how I would do it. You need a measuring device, which we have here. It's just a measuring wheel. And we need a calculator, which we'll go over some of the log entries I'm making, and we'll show you everything at the end. Anyway, this is how I do it. "33 feet, first time in. So what do? That's my log book. I'm just going to write down 33 feet. Why am I not worried about inches? Because that's where the 10 times comes in. Even if it was an inch a time, you're basically up to about a foot off. Okay, as you can see, we have our 10 measurements in there. Now it's just a quick math problem. We're going to divide, well, first we'll add all of those numbers up, take the total of all of those numbers and divide it by 10, which, if you're good with math, you can just move the decimal place over, hence not having to use much of anything in the number 10, and you'll find out what your average stride length is in feet. Okay, welcome back for almost the final installment. As you can see, it came up to 323 feet, which, if you move the decimal point over 2 places, because we're dividing by 10, or 2 decimal areas, you come up with 3.23 feet per stride. Why is this useful? Well, I'm going to give you a demonstration, but if I know the distance between 2 points and I were to know what my stride is, I could tell you how many strides are in between it. Or you can reverse the equation. If I want to know what the distance is between 2 points, 2 trees, I can take my paces and then figure it out from there by using just simple multiplication. Alright, YouTube, welcome back. This is the last demonstration. Although you don't know this, I've already measured this with the wheel. You can see we are totally calibrated in at nothing. We're going to measure this, we're going to count my strides, and we're going to see how close we are. And then I'm going to show you why this would be important for the very final time. But anyway, here we go. Alright, as you can see, it came up as 49 feet, but I happen to know that it's 50. I've measured it with tape, but we're fairly close within the wheel, hence us doing things 10 times. Alright, welcome back. As you can see, gang, that is the final numbers. 16 strides, 51.68 feet, so like almost 52, versus 50 feet. Pretty close. We'll talk here in a minute. Anyway, back to task. We came up with roughly 15.5 to 16 strides. At 16 strides, I think the math on the paper that you saw worked out to, what was that, 51.68 feet. And I knew the distance to be 50 feet. What does that mean from our purposes? You would be able to easily kind of walk through a forest and know where your sweet spot is, which is usually somewhere between, say, 14 and 16 feet apart for your average individual. That's an ideal setup, typically. You can accommodate setups a little closer than that. I think I've seen them as close as 12 feet, depending on what your continuous loops are. You need to know those figures before you kind of mess around with it, I guess. But in a nutshell, that's what I would do. I would play around with this. you can get fairly accurate. I don't bring any other measuring device except for my stride length and your handy dandy deal. If this comes out to around 30 degrees and I'm looking around and it seems like it's doable, I may measure it off. That's usually my starting point. I literally will take a tree and do this and kind of see where my fingers line up on the diagonal there, and where that comes across is your ending point. You take a peek at it, see if you're going to have everything work out. Maybe for an ideal setup, you know, if you're looking at the ground over there, for example, does it look like it's going to set nice, and move from there. Practice makes perfect, but this is probably the easiest way to figure out distances in the field. Work this stuff out ahead of time. We preach this all the time: practice, practice, practice. Well, this is practice. Practice with science. That's another easy way to do things. If you know a known distance, a trail for example, mile marker to mile marker, you count your steps in between. That's a really good way of figuring out what your average stride length is. I mean, think about it. If you divide 5,280 feet by 3, which is roughly what my stride length is, 3 feet, you'll have a good idea of how many steps that is.